book,
Oh.
so.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And it's 10 o'clock.
But she's better now.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, so hello everybody. We'll go ahead and start the meeting. First is the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
The second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next we have the approval of the minutes. Give you a chance to look over the minutes. Amy sent out the minutes ahead of time when you're ready. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I think Bobby's lips are moving.
Hey, Bobby, unmute your computer. Bobby, your computer's muted. Put your cursor in the top right-hand corner of your picture. And the little button should come up that says mute or unmute. Would someone else care to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Also moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. Moving on down the agenda, we have the general fund statement of revenues and expenditures. Ms. Miller?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman, Dr. Martin Knox, and Finance Committee members. This morning, we're going to talk about the general fund statement of revenue and expenditures for May 31st, 2020. We'll then talk about capital projects and then the bond resolution discussion. You should have information in front of you. As you can see, the first page there on the revenue, the major change, majority of the change this time in the revenue is our tax projection and our 3186 state aid to classroom projection of revenue. The projections in the taxes increase based on the May taxes collected and received by the district in June. I did perform an analysis of those taxes, and it does appear that there was a large deferred tax amount that was collected this past fall, which is why our tax revenue appears to be higher than budgeted. That was because of a collection that related to the prior year revenue that we actually physically received in the current year. And then the state aid to classrooms, the 3186 revenue, that's approximately $238,000 more than we had budgeted. And the way that revenue is calculated, it's based on the professional certified staff listing based on the 135th day, and so the State Department updated that revenue for us, and I have reflected that in this report. So you can see there in that third column, the fiscal year 20 projected revenue is $129,911,967. Are there any questions Keep in mind that the tax revenue still needs to be adjusted for an allowance for doubtful accounts based on the current economic conditions. That could be a reduction in revenue if we have a large allowance. And so we are still working on closing out the year, so those numbers are still going to fluctuate as we proceed with closing the year out. Are there any questions on the revenue?
I do have a question regarding one of the revenue categories, actually a couple of them, but 3352, pupils in poverty. Obviously, we're receiving some revenue from somewhere for pupils in poverty. Tell me a little bit about what that is, please.
Which was the revenue code? I'm sorry, which 33?
3-352.
And so that's based on the state funding, all the 3300s, that's based on base student, the student cost, and it's based on attendance, and it's a calculation and received from the State Department based on the attendance records and the students categorized.
So is that for meals or just for general expenses for students who apparently are in poverty?
It's just for general expenditures. This has nothing to do with food service in the general fund. Anything related to meals would be over in a 600 fund that we don't discuss when we talk about the general fund.
Well, we receive that every year, don't we?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then you said you had another question?
No, not really. I guess I'm good. That one just I guess I had noticed that one before.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Okay. We'll move up to the expenditures on the second page. The change from last month's projections relate mostly in the salary and benefits, and it's just a slight change, $180,000 less than what we were projecting. Again, as we get closer to year end, we've already run the payroll accruals. We may have a few more changes in payroll, and then of course, as we close out the balance sheet and make our adjustments for year-end accruals, we'll adjust based on those as well. So based on the change we talked about with the revenue and that slight change in expenditures, the estimated fund balance for June 30th, 2020 is approximately $4.4 million. And I just want to point out that any additions to the fund balance this year will most likely need to be utilized to offset any revenue reductions and mandated expenditure increases next year. Those were not items that were included in our request for the county council for funding. And as we've been able to increase our fund balance by being fiscally responsible, we are positioning the district to be able to handle a financial situation such as a revenue reduction that we may be faced with next year.
And it's in anticipating that we're going to be faced with revenue reduction because tax receipts by the state are going to be down because of depressed business activity.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments about expenditures?
All right.
Okay, moving on then, Jennifer, thank you.
Yes, capital projects. I have the funds available for you to review. These are as of May 31st. We start with Fund 519. We're very, very close to having that one completely spent. We only have about $8,800 left in that one, so we are working diligently to spend and proceed with these projects. I'm not going to go through all the details, but if you have any specific questions on any of the other funds or the projects, we'll be happy to answer those.
I have a question about roof repairs. Where are we working on roofs?
I know that we have several projects in the works. We have the consultant that we're working with now on the roofs. They've completed, I believe, their complete study on all of our roofs. We've prioritized, and we are addressing based on the need, which roofs will be dealt with first.
Well, I'm curious which ones we are working on. Do we have that information available? Well, let me, what's going on? I see some materials stacked up outside Millwood that have been there for a couple of months. What is that about?
I know Oswell and Millwood were the two that we're going to be on next. I do not have the status. Is Mr. Myers on, Dr. Martinox?
He's not on, but I can get him. But to answer the question in terms of the materials outside of Millwood, good morning again, everyone. The materials that are outside of Millwood, that's also for the playground. There's taking place to make sure that we bring our playgrounds into compliance. But they also are having roof work. So depends on which materials you're looking at. But the ones that have been there for quite some time, it's about the playground. It's for the playground.
Yeah, they're stacked up in the front on the Pinewood roadside.
Yeah, I believe that's the playground. But I can get Mr. Myers to join us.
Yeah. But the Millwood roof is on the schedule to have some work done on it as well, we think?
Yes, sir.
I had that Monday, June 8th, those were gonna start depending on the weather, of course, and I know we've had rain, so obviously when we have rain, we can't be working on the roofs, but those were the two that were slated to begin.
Yeah.
Is this following our, report that we got back on what our building needs are? Is that in line with that?
As far as the study that was done, the study, the
Facility study.
yes, sir. I don't know if the facility study, did that include the roofs? I think there was a roofing study prior to.
Separate study.
And then when we engaged in the new consultant, they did their own evaluation, a new evaluation. And so it's based on the new evaluation of what roofs we're gonna work on with the most current needs.
Mr. Myers will be on shortly. Amy, he's gonna come in, Ms. Hanson, he's gonna come in there with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess as we wait, are there any other questions on other projects, Dr. Hilton?
I have a question, Dr. Hill. You might have said it before, Jennifer. I guess it's, the furniture, can you tell me what furniture, what category are that for schools, or what's the furniture?
Yes, sir, that's for schools, and what we've compiled is a list of needs from all the schools, and we're prioritizing and determining which it would include student chairs, desks, whatever furniture is needed in the schools.
Mr. Myers is now joining us. He can also, Mr. Reagan, address the rotation schedule that we are creating to make sure the furnishings are supplied to our schools based on the needs and the prioritization. Mr. Myers, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
So there were several questions prior to your arrival. One is about the roofing work and where we are and which schools are in the process of having the roofing work done. The other question was, there are materials that are outside of Millwood on the Pinewood side. What are those materials for? I believe that they were the playground materials, but you can expand upon that. And the other question that was just presented when you came in was about the furniture expenditures and how we're utilizing those funds. So can you talk about those three topics and any other questions that may be posed to you at this time?
Okay, good morning, everyone. The roofing work that's being conducted now, we have two schools that are underway, one being Croswell and the other being Millwood. It's an extensive project, and they have begun work, and they're working to make sure that they can replace certain sections of the roof at those two facilities. In reference to Millwood, I think the question was about the materials that are for the roofing. Is that right? The playground equipment. Some of the playground equipment is being removed because they are now in the process. That's a different company altogether who's restoring the playground areas by putting down the mulch. And there's certain equipment that has been broken or obsolete that they're discarding. And so as they go along, they're doing that, and they will be removing that, by the middle of next week. They're trying to complete that process. And they're doing the same thing over at Croswell as well.
They're repairing some playground equipment at Croswell also.
They inspect it first, and if it's broken, they'll remove it or they'll replace it, depending on what is wrong with it. And it's the same thing they're doing at Millwood.
My question was on the Pinewood Road side of Millwood, right there by the Kangaroo or Circle K or whatever it is, there's a lot of material stacked up with tarps over it. I assume that was for roofing material. Is that what that is, or what?
That is correct. They cover the material so it won't get wet, and it's covered and it's sort of secured so it cannot be removed. But the majority of that is materials for the roofing process.
Well, I was just curious because it's been sitting there for a very long time. It appears to me not very much progress is being made because that stack doesn't seem to, I pass by there every day, sometimes several times a day. And that stack doesn't seem to be getting any smaller.
Well, it takes a while for them to get to the point where they can use all of it. It's an ongoing project and they have to prepare the roof before they can start adding things to it. But they have begun that process already. So it's going to look that way for a minute because they are working on it. Now, there are some weather conditions that get in the way. You know, with the rain, it's going to delay that process. And we have had some rain, and even when they get to work, they have to make sure that the weather is not going to enhance their progress.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and
I understand, and I understand. I also understand the importance of trying to do roof work in the summertime when we don't have school. So I know you're encouraging them to be as expeditious as possible.
Absolutely.
In the process.
Yes, sir. And I think
Question about Croswell. Question about Croswell. Is that roofing of the older part of that building or that new part that was built about 5 years ago?
it's the older section. I don't have a diagram to show you right now, but as you're approaching the main part of the building, it's the farther section to the right and to the section over the cafeteria.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think there was another question in reference to furniture. We have begun to compile our list of furniture and trying to prioritize those schools based off our budgeting process. They gave information about the need for furniture, and we've begun to compile that, and we'll begin to start getting bids on those pieces that are needed. But just about every school needs something, and we want to make sure we can get those pieces that are more essential to the ones that are in those schools, especially elementary schools. That's been our biggest request.
On that equipment, on the playground, you said that the guys, the contractor's going around inspecting it and then replacing and or removing the damaged parts and whatever. Is there someone going to, with that contractor, is that not done sort of in advance to determine what needs to be done? Or is this just left up to the contractor?
No, it was inspected initially before they arrived to see exactly what was wrong. And as they came along, there's someone who goes to make sure before they remove it, there's someone there. We try to get Mr. Chan, who's there, to make sure that that process is done in accordance to the way that we have agreed. So it's not just them arbitrarily removing it.
And I would add to that it was out for bid, it went through the procurement process, and
Right.
so it was a competitive bid that, everybody was comparing the same equipment that needed to be replaced.
Good.
I have a question regarding furniture. When school reopens, when we return to a hybrid model, it seems we're gonna have to remove some furniture from some classrooms. Is that what we're thinking? We're gonna remove desks, or we're gonna leave all the desks? And then my question is, if we have to remove half the desks in the district, where are we gonna put them?
Well, it's not that we're ordering new desks, whatever materials that's.
No, I'm talking about the desks that are sitting in the rooms right now. If we go to a model where half the kids come on certain days and half the kids come on another days, then we're only gonna need half as many desks in the room. And it seemed to me, it would be easier on the teacher to get the kids to social distance if there aren't 20 desks in the room, but 10 desks in the room. And so my question is, what are we gonna do with those other 10 desks times 500 classrooms?
There are
Just something to be thinking about.
There are some storage spaces at the schools, and we have storage spaces at a warehouse that we have. So we'll move some of that out, but we'll work along with that and make sure it's done in a proper fashion.
You have any thoughts on that, Dr. Martin? No.
Oh, I agree with you, and that's a conversation that we've had. So we talked about the benefits of keeping the desks in place because that will adhere or assist us with adhering if we place a child every other desk. That will give us the 6-foot recommendation by the CDC. We also talked about removing them. And the concern does come into place with making sure we have enough storage for those desks. Because what I don't want to occur is for us to put them in the hallway, which blocks and obstructs the pathway of our children as they travel. So we're wearing both options. If we have storage space, we will remove them. But again, we will work with our principals to make sure we understand what their needs are and what's the best approach to take, whether leaving the desks in and spacing the students with the desks used as spacers or removing them altogether. One of the things that we have at some of our schools, as we have begun to look at the way in which we deliver instruction, excuse me, when we've been talking about individualized and personalized instruction and making sure students are working collaboratively, we also have a challenge in some of our schools where they've begun to order kidney desks, if we will, and those are the ones that can be pieced together to give us semicircles or for small group instruction, or can be manipulated to put children in collaborative working groups. It's going to be very difficult for us to utilize those desks moving forward. So some of our furniture may have to be swapped out, but that's something that we're working on moving forward.
Yeah, that's interesting that there is a plus and a minus to having all the desks or half the desks. So
Yes, sir.
There may be that you could use those desks between, as a barrier between the teacher and the length of the students. You might just put them together and use them as a barrier there.
Yes, sir. And there's another piece that we've also talked about, and that's utilization of a teacher's desks. And that's, again, a conversation we'll have with our educators, because I have my own philosophy about going into a classroom. We're talking about teachers as facilitators of learning. When you go into a classroom, you should not be able to determine which is the front of the room and which is the back of the room. So this is also an opportunity for us to shift our practice and our thinking in terms of ensuring that our children are educated in a manner in which we are preparing them for the future. So, you know, it may even include removing the teachers' desks. So again, that's an ongoing conversation because it is an instructional piece as well.
I have one other observation. In looking over this, these capital projects reports, it's very generic, and often I think when these projects are approved, that these funds are earmarked for a certain project, and this is just something for future reference to think about in the future. It might be helpful as we're analyzing these expenditures and these budgets, is to have more information as to which school, for example, you know, floor repairs or wall HVAC wall units or whatever. And in some cases that is designated, but most of the time, as I'm glancing through here, you know, here's one that says for Cala HVAC, but most of the time, there's no designation, and I think it would be helpful, certainly to the board, as we look at this, to have a little bit more information if these funds are indeed earmarked for a specific project. Is something to be thinking about, not trying to create more work for you, Jennifer.
Oh, actually, that's a great idea, and the account numbers, if you ever notice, it has a dot or a dash XX at the end. I've just matched those into one row to be consolidated, but it's different by class or by school location. So it's just a matter of using the report that just comes directly from the system, quite honestly, and not preparing this consolidation if that's the board's preference.
Right. Any other discussion?
Dr. Hilton, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is an item regarding laptops causes me to ask, and I'm confident we must have some sort of rolling replacement plan for the laptops and Chromebooks around the district. But which students now, or which grade levels now, or which groups now have either laptops or Chromebooks? And I'm thinking in terms of virtual learning for the upcoming school year. Which ones have and which ones do not have currently?
So at this time, our first graders would be the ones who do not have, because they were kindergarten students when we began the rollout. So we would have to issue those students Chromebooks. And so as our seniors departed, we collected those devices, and so they will be recirculated. But there's also a plan to replenish some of those devices that have expired in terms of SIPA compliance and in the method in which it corresponds with our server. So it's first graders right now.
So we're able to go back. We could do the virtual for a while if we need to, as far as classroom instruction is concerned, because of the COVID. Continue with everyone having the Chromebooks and or a laptop. We could continue in that method for a while and not have to worry about the desk removal at this point.
Yes, sir, but in terms of planning ahead, our intention is to get our children back into the classroom as soon as we possibly can and when it's safe. So we have to plan for the desks, just so that we can receive them in an appropriate manner, but while also maintaining the guidelines. But to answer your question, yes, we could continue to move forward with the virtual approach if necessary.
Concern would be for the adults, as these young people are not as susceptible to this virus as the adults are, and with some of the people that will be working in the system, be it custodians and or teachers or whomever, will be older age, some of them, and they could affect them.
That's correct. Thank you for that.
Any further discussion or questions regarding capital projects? Moving on then, what's our bond resolution?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to discuss that in the next board meeting. The board will be presented with the resolutions for the routine bond issuance that we have every year. It's reoccurring. It's the fall capital project 8% money, and then also a TAN, a tax anticipation note funding. Again, routine debt that is issued each year by the district, and that will be presented to the board on July 20th.
Will the board receive a list of anticipated projects that the bond resolution money will cover prior to our action on the bond resolution?
The action on the bond resolution is just issuing the debt. The capital projects listed detail can be provided at a later time, but we are working on that to get those prepared as quickly as possible as well. And if we are able to get it to the board prior to that meeting, but they do not have to vote on that part. This is just on the part for issuing the bonds.
And then what's the TAN for?
The TAN is as the district continues to pay bills throughout the entire year. The large source of our revenue does not come in until January when our tax revenue comes in. And so it's routine to issue a tax anticipation note.
Yeah.
And pay it off when those proceeds come in from the tax revenue.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on the bond resolution? At this time, our agenda calls for us to go into executive session. Do I hear a motion that we enter into executive session for the discussion of contractual and personnel matters, receipt of legal advice, including relating to a pending, threatening, or potential claim?
I so move.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Ben, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. The ayes have it. We'll enter into executive session at this time. Amy, will we just sit tight and you can take care of it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, she said stay. Are we off, Harvey?
Not yet. Give me a moment, please. Why?
We're ready. Are you off yet? I'll plug it back on once we go.
Sure.
Are we ready, Amy?
No, not yet.
Okay. Return to open session. Any objections to returning to open session? Hearing none, we're back in the open session now. Is there any action needed by the group resulting from executive session or any recommendations we would like to bring forward at this time? Hearing no one speak up for action or recommendations, if we are in consensus and there are no objections, then we will adjourn at this time. Any objections to adjournment? Very good. Thank you so much for your attendance today. Thank you for your service to our children and to our community. Y'all be safe and be well. Talk to you again soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
Peace. Bye-bye.